Most people never notice it. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't feel dramatic. It often looks like politeness, maturity, or emotional intelligence. Yet it quietly shapes how millions of people live their lives. It is the habit of explaining yourself. Explaining why you feel the way you feel. Explaining why you made a certain choice. Explaining why you are tired, distant, quiet, different. Explaining your boundaries. Explaining your emotions. Explaining your existence. At first glance, this seems harmless, even admirable. After all, isn't communication healthy? Isn't clarity respectful? Isn't explanation a sign of empathy? But when explanation becomes compulsive, when silence feels dangerous, when you feel anxious unless others understand, something much deeper is happening. Not a communication issue, a psychological one. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because behind the constant need to justify yourself lies a silent question that has never been answered. Do I have the right to exist as I am? Modern life rewards explainers, those who smooth things over, those who clarify endlessly, those who manage emotions, both their own and everyone else's. You are praised for being understanding, for being reasonable, for being easy to deal with. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to believe something dangerous. That your feelings must make sense to others in order to be valid. That your decisions must be justified in order to be respected. That your silence must be explained in order to be tolerated. This belief doesn't usually form in adulthood. It is inherited. The compulsion to explain does not begin with maturity. It begins with invalidated subjectivity. It begins in environments where a child's inner world is treated as inconvenient, exaggerated, or wrong. Not always violently, often subtly. A child expresses sadness and is told they are too sensitive. They express anger and are labeled difficult. They express fear and are mocked or dismissed. They express excitement and are told to calm down. The message is not spoken directly. It doesn't need to be. The message is absorbed. What you feel is unreliable. Your inner experience needs external correction. You must explain yourself to be safe. Over time, explanation becomes survival. If I explain well enough, I won't be punished. If I justify myself clearly, I won't be rejected. If I make sense to others, I won't be abandoned. And so the child learns something that will follow them into adulthood. Connection requires self-justification. As an adult, this belief no longer feels like fear. It feels like personality. You say things like, I just like people to understand where I'm coming from. I hate being misunderstood. I don't want to seem rude. I just want to explain myself. But beneath these words is an unspoken anxiety. If I don't explain, something bad will happen. Rejection, conflict, withdrawal of affection, judgment. So you over-explain. You add footnotes to your emotions. You attach logic to your feelings. You preemptively defend your choices. Not because you are weak, but because, somewhere inside, you learned that existing without justification is dangerous. Here is what no one tells you. Every explanation carries a cost. Each time you justify yourself unnecessarily, you subtly give away authority over your inner world. You send a message, both to others and to yourself. My experience is negotiable. Slowly, this erodes something essential, your internal compass. Instead of asking, is this true for me? You begin asking, will this make sense to them? Instead of acting from conviction, you act from anticipation. Instead of feeling freely, you filter your emotions through acceptability. And without realizing it, you stop living from the inside out. You begin living from the outside in. At first, this seems functional. You adapt well. You avoid conflict. You are liked. But over time, something fractures. You laugh when nothing feels funny. You say yes when your body says no. You explain exhaustion instead of admitting sadness. You intellectualize pain instead of feeling it. You become fluent in emotional translation, but illiterate in your own language. This is not authenticity. It is self-abandonment, disguised as maturity. And it creates a quiet exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to cure. Because the exhaustion is not physical, it is existential. The need to explain persists because it works, at least temporarily. It reduces tension. It reassures others. It creates the illusion of safety. But safety purchased through self-betrayal is unstable, because the moment you stop explaining, anxiety floods in. Silence feels heavy. Uncertainty feels dangerous. The old fear resurfaces. What if they misunderstand me? What if they leave? What if I'm seen as wrong? This is why many people talk themselves out of silence. They mistake discomfort for danger. But discomfort is not the enemy. Avoidance is. At the core of compulsive explanation is the absence of inner authority. Inner authority is not arrogance. It is not dominance. It is not emotional detachment. It is the quiet certainty that your experience is valid before anyone agrees with it. When inner authority is weak, external validation becomes necessary. You outsource your self-trust. Others become the judges of your reality, and this creates a hierarchy where your inner world sits below public approval. This hierarchy is subtle but devastating, because whoever controls validation controls behavior. Why silence feels threatening. Silence is dangerous to those who depend on explanation, because silence removes the familiar structure. No reassurance, no defense, no emotional negotiation, just presence. And presence forces a confrontation. Do I trust myself enough to not be understood? For someone conditioned to explain, silence feels like abandonment. But in truth, it is the beginning of reunion. The difference between silence and withdrawal. Not all silence is the same. There is silence born of fear, avoidant, closed, resentful. And there is silence born of integrity, calm, grounded, complete. The second kind of silence does not punish others. It simply refuses to perform. It says, I am not hiding. I am not defending. I am not asking. It is not absence. It is presence without negotiation. What happens when you stop explaining? When you stop explaining yourself compulsively, several things happen, not all of them comfortable. First, some people become uneasy. Those who relied on your explanations to feel secure lose their reference point. Those who benefited from your self-doubt lose leverage. Those who mistook your compliance for connection feel threatened. This is not because you are wrong. It is because the dynamic has changed. You are no longer positioning yourself below understanding. You are standing beside yourself. Relationships built on imbalance do not survive inner authority because they require one person to remain uncertain. When you stop explaining, manipulation loses traction, guilt loses power, emotional games lose fuel, not through confrontation, through non-participation. And this is deeply unsettling for anyone who expected your justification. The courage of not being understood. One of the hardest lessons in psychological maturity is this: not everyone needs to understand you. Understanding is not a prerequisite for respect. Agreement is not a condition for dignity. The need to be understood often masks the fear of being alone. But aloneness is not the same as abandonment. Aloneness can be grounded, whole, free. When inner authority grows, communication changes. You no longer speak to convince. You speak to express. You no longer defend your emotions. You state them. You no longer negotiate your boundaries. You hold them. Words become fewer, but truer. Silence becomes meaningful, not empty. and something remarkable happens. Your nervous system relaxes, because it no longer has to manage perception. Why this is psychological freedom? Freedom is not the absence of conflict. It is the absence of self-betrayal. When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, you reclaim energy. You reclaim attention. You reclaim authorship of your life. You move from performance to presence, from justification to being, the psychological addiction to explanation. There is another layer to this pattern that is rarely discussed. The need to explain oneself is not only rooted in fear. Over time, it becomes addictive. Each explanation brings a brief sense of relief, a temporary calm, a momentary feeling of safety. You explain yourself, and tension drops, just enough for your nervous system to believe the strategy worked. But this relief is deceptive, because the calm does not come from self-trust. It comes from compliance. And compliance, when repeated, trains the psyche to believe that peace is conditional, that peace depends on being understood, that calm depends on approval, that safety depends on explanation. This is how the habit reinforces itself, not through logic, but through emotional conditioning. Why explanation feels like control? Many people believe they explain themselves to be understood. In reality, they explain themselves to control uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable because it opens the door to rejection, misinterpretation, or loss of connection. Explanation attempts to close that door. If I explain well enough, they won't misunderstand. If I clarify my intention, they won't judge me. If I justify my boundary, they won't leave. But this is an illusion of control. You cannot control how others perceive you, and every attempt to do so quietly shifts your focus away from your own center. Instead of standing in your experience, you manage reactions. Instead of inhabiting your truth, you negotiate it. And over time, life becomes less about living and more about anticipating responses. This constant anticipation drains something essential: vitality. Not energy in the physical sense, but aliveness. When your inner world is always being filtered, explained, or softened, it loses intensity. Joy becomes measured. Anger becomes intellectualized. Desire becomes reasonable. Pain becomes polite. Nothing is allowed to exist in its raw form. And yet, rawness is where life feels real. When explanation dominates, experience becomes distant, observed rather than lived. You are present, but not embodied. The moment you stop editing yourself. There comes a moment, often quiet, when you realize how much you have been editing. Editing emotions before they are felt, editing thoughts before they are spoken, editing reactions before they are allowed. And with that realization comes a choice, not a dramatic one, a subtle one. To pause before explaining, to feel the urge and not act on it, to let silence hold the space where justification used to live. This pause is powerful because it interrupts the old pattern, and in that interruption, something new can form. When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, self-respect begins to grow, not because others treat you differently, though some will, but because you treat yourself differently. You stop assuming that your experience is flawed by default. You stop positioning yourself as someone who must be corrected. You stop asking for permission to be where you already are. This is not defiance, it is alignment. And alignment has a quiet authority that explanation never achieves. Why? This changes everything. When you no longer explain yourself compulsively, your life simplifies. Not because problems disappear, but because you stop multiplying them through self-doubt. You speak when there is something to express, not something to defend. You are silent when silence is truthful, not avoidant. You move with clarity instead of justification. And slowly, steadily, you return to yourself, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. So the real question is not, how do I make others understand me? It is, am I willing to exist without permission? Because the moment you answer yes, silently, internally, without explanation, everything changes.